This time on Poll Hub, what does a post-Roe America look like? We have details from our poll done in the aftermath of the decision and are joined by an expert in this part of the law to explore what comes next. Then we're digging around in our own backyard. New York Governor Kathy Hochul won big in her primary race recently. What does it say about her moderate brand of politics? And will she have any coattails in November? Democrats sure hope so. And we end with a story about a deep divide in America circa 1954. But it's probably not the one you think. We're back from our break, raring to go, so let's get to it. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Mary Griffith.
And I'm Lee Maringoff.
And hey, we're back from our 2-week hiatus. And during that 2 weeks' time, a lot has happened. In fact, it's been 2 weeks since the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, which for nearly 50 years guaranteed a federal right to an abortion. There are still a lot of unknowns. They still exist, but there are two things that are pretty clear to us today. Our national polling with our partners NPR and the PBS NewsHour, as well as other polling organizations such as Pew Research, show that a majority of Americans disagree with the court's decision. And the second thing that has become very clear is that the discussion now turns to states and to states' rights. Here to share her expertise on this subject with us today is Dara E. Purvis. Dara is a professor of law at Penn State University. She is also the Associate Dean for Research and Partnerships, as well as a scholar of family law, feminist legal theory, masculinities and sexuality, gender identity, and the law. Dara, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Well, we want to start off with that question of states' rights. Where does the debate now go?
Well, the debate is kicked into the states for the first step after the Supreme Court's decision. So previously, Roe v. Wade and a later decision, Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Casey, said, here are the guardrails for abortion. States, pre-viability, you cannot enact laws that put an undue burden in the path of a person seeking an abortion. This decision, Dobbs just removes that, just overrules those cases, says never mind. And in a number of those states, they had laws ready to jump into place. They either had laws that were passed before Roe v. Wade that they never took off of the law books, or a number of other states passed what are known as trigger laws that said if Roe v. Wade is ever overturned, this law will take effect, usually they say in 30 days or so. So a number of states already have actions jumping into place that were voted on decades ago. And then in a number of other states, we've seen a lot of action in states passing more and more restrictive abortion laws. We're going to see that continue in the future.
There are, I would believe, states where there are legal actions trying to prevent these restrictions from taking place. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so there are a number of different challenges to the laws that are coming up. A lot of them now really get kicked into the world of state law because states have constitutions too. So what the Supreme Court did was rooted in the federal constitution. Roe v. Wade said that there's a right to privacy in the federal constitution. Most people cite it in the 14th Amendment. But every state has a state constitution as well. And most states have something roughly analogous to the same language that we have in the federal 14th Amendment. And so these states, you see action in state court either saying, this law is too vague, this law can't be enforced easily, or saying we in whatever state in question have a constitutional right to abortion similar to that the court overturned, but we're going to ask state courts to enforce it.
Our poll showed that 56% of Americans opposed the overturning and 57% thought that the decision was politically motivated. The court has certainly been out of step with public opinion before. I mean, in Loving versus Virginia, the public was not in line with the court in that case, and many others. Is it different this time? What does it mean that the court is out of step in this case with public opinion? And that the public is seeing, this as politically motivated. I guess there's two different questions there.
I definitely think that this is different than what we've seen before. So you're right, the court is obviously counter-majoritarian. It is not an elected body. Its job is not to represent the will of the people. And I think that most Americans in the past have generally, they may be upset over decisions or disagree with the decisions that the court has issued, but there's a sense that this is kind of what it's supposed to be doing. And maybe I disagree with this result, but that's the nature of courts. This term and the makeup of this court really feels different to me for a few reasons. One is, this decision is unique. We have had decisions, famous decisions that overrule past cases, but they have not taken away rights. They have extended rights. They have, overturned decisions that limited rights in the past. We have not seen a decision come out of the Supreme Court that says, here is a right that we said 50 years ago that women throughout America, people who can become pregnant throughout America hold, and now we're going to take that back, and you're going to see a significant shrink in rights and decisions that are available to people. And that feels very different even from other decisions I think that the public has disagreed with. But I think that the number of actions that this court has taken, this term in particular, that run so far against public opinion, it seems like the court has shifted. It's no longer counter-majoritarian, it's anti-majoritarian. It feels like they are enacting policy choices that they cannot get to through the democratic process. And I think people are really outraged by that.
This whole topic and the recent action just raises so many questions, and I'm just in my mind trying to sort out which I want to ask you. So let me start with one of them at least. And that is, thinking back to the Senate hearings with the three recent, before the current judge just took the bench, but the three Trump appointees, each of those judges sort of pledged fidelity to the precedent of Roe v. Wade and then clearly reversed themselves. Is there any, it's not a recourse. Some people have said, well, can we do anything about that? And I don't know if there's any recourse, but is this an unusual kind of just backflip that these folks have done? And I mean, the question of truthfulness can't help but be raised when you think about what they were saying, and you see the tapes, and then the action's just so diametrically opposed to that.
I think maybe I am too much of a cynic for this question, because I watched those hearings and just thought they're dancing around the question. Yeah. Everyone knows what they think of abortion. Everyone knows that. And it doesn't really matter if you're being considered for the job of Supreme Court justice. You're a lower court judge, you have, or any other job, and they say, well, what do you think of Roe v. Wade? Of course, everyone will just say, oh, well, it's settled precedent. Well, yeah, it is, until the Supreme Court overturns it, which they haven't had a chance to do recently. It was an attempt to do that in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and they chose not to. But it's not exactly a lie. None of them got up and said, I solemnly swear that I will not overturn Roe v. Wade. They just danced around the question. Yeah. And so one of the things that frustrated me at the time and continues to frustrate me, and everyone picks on her, and I'm going to continue to do so, Susan Collins gasping in despair and saying, but they promised me. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. And everyone knew it at the time. And it's silly of you to act surprised now. We all knew this was coming.
Yeah, no, I get that. And the jumping to the chronologically ahead, Justice Thomas clearly indicated that he thought this was going to now be a bridge to lots of other things. We've talked about what this means to states, but what about other rights that are now seem to be on the chopping block as far as this judge is concerned? Are the other judges, do you think, to concur with that, or do you think Thomas is just getting ahead of things?
No, I think Thomas is the only justice who is being honest about, the only justice, I should say, in the majority, who is being honest about the clear implication of this decision. Okay. So in the cases that led up to Obergefell, dealing with questions of LGBTQ equality, Justice Scalia used to always write in dissent and say, they claim that this isn't going to lead to marriage. Don't believe them. And I feel like I'm doing the same right now. Justice Alito's opinion for the majority lays out a clear path that says, if you're claiming a fundamental right, we are only going to protect things that the framers of the 14th Amendment would have considered fundamental, things that we have historically protected, things that are implicit in the concept of ordered liberty to white guys who owned property in 1868. And then he says, so there's no right to privacy, but don't worry about any other rights. This is different because we have the consideration for potential life, for unborn life, and so this limits it. This abortion is different. All of his analysis, everything he says, is just as applicable to, as Justice Thomas says in his concurrence, things like the right to privacy encompassing access to contraceptives, decisions around birth control and deciding to prevent pregnancy. It applies just as clearly to laws criminalizing sodomy between same-sex couples, other laws that discriminated against LGBTQ people, marriage statutes that did not allow same-sex couples to get married. And all of those decisions, or I should say all except the very first contraceptive decisions, are newer than Roe. So I absolutely don't believe Justice Alito saying, oh, don't worry about marriage equality. Half the justices in the majority wrote in dissent in Obergefell and said, this is wrong. How dare the majority do this? Do I find it plausible that abortion is so different that if given the opportunity, they wouldn't convert their dissents into a majority decision reversing Obergefell? Of course they would. They've told us that they would. They've told us that's what they believe. Yeah. So we should believe them.
I would be remiss to let you go and not ask you, what does this decision say about the Roberts Court?
It's no longer the Roberts Court. Chief Justice Roberts really famously, and somewhat implausibly in my opinion, but he at least has an idea that the neutral judging is possible. At his confirmation hearings, he famously talked about the role of a justice is calling balls and strikes. You're just looking at facts and matching them up to the rules, and it's not your personal preferences. And he tried to come to some kind of middle ground in this decision. He tried to say, well, we could allow this statute, Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks. We could say that it's constitutional without actually saying we overrule Roe. It probably just kicks the can down the road. It's not a viable permanent solution, but it would be some kind of middle ground here. And I think we would have seen very different public reaction to a decision that did that. And he could not convince any of the conservative majority justices to join him. Leah Littman, a professor at Michigan, has been describing the court as the YOLO court. They see their chance to enact these preferences, and they're going to take every opportunity to do it. And if that means they issue a gun rights decision that the vast majority of Americans disagree with one day and 24 hours later reverse Roe v. Wade, they're going to do it, and the legitimacy of the court be damned. Chief Justice Roberts absolutely, I'm sure, is horrified by that. He really cares about the institutional legitimacy of the court. And I think he's seeing it go up in flames. He is not in the driver's seat anymore. The conservative, the really, really conservative justices, I mean, Chief Justice Roberts is conservative, but the firebrand conservatives are steering the ship, to continue mixing transportation metaphors.
Well, Dara Purvis, professor of law at Penn State University, we very much appreciate your time today. I have a feeling this issue is not going away, and I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Thanks so much.
So let's turn the page and look a little bit closer to home, New York State here, and New York State politics. The reason we do that is that we have seen in New York something that a lot of people are talking about nationally, which is that moderate Democrats are winning in races that may portend a change, a slight shift in the Democratic Party from a lot of the progressive energy that we saw over the last few years, AOC being maybe the primary flag waver on that, to something a little bit more in the center, a little bit more pragmatic. Kathy Hochul is the governor here. She won in a primary. She still has a general election ahead of her. She won in a primary over a more moderate Democrat, but also a pretty strong progressive candidate. And so she won big. And we wonder what that means. Lee, you've followed New York State politics and the ups and downs of especially the governors for generations kind of here, when Republicans used to rule the roost. What do you see as if there is any meaning in Kathy Hochul's win and the size of it in a low turnout primary.
Yeah. Which can also, low turnout can mean the most committed, dedicated firebrands vote, and that
right should help progressives is their theory.
Should. Well, I think there's two things. I think some of it applies specifically to Governor Hochul, in that she came in under circumstances well known with Andrew Cuomo and the scandal, and so she, as lieutenant governor, became governor. She's the first woman governor in New York State, and she would now be the first woman governor elected for a 4-year term in her own right in New York State. So there is, throwing her out would go counter to some of the current values that the Democratic Party is trying to put forward also. So in a sense...
Because her opponents in the primary were both men. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Of course. And so it had that, I think, tone to it, the context. So to your broader point, and this is interesting also, is that Democrats are going through a sobering process. I mean, I think, where they used to fall in love with candidates, they're trying now to fall in line a little bit more, because electability has become a concern. And so, given what's gone on the last few years with the Republicans and President Trump, and the concerns about what might happen in the midterm elections with the Congress, Democrats are not feeling that there's a lot of political capital to spend on, what might be called, experiment or a long shot. So the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warrens are not going to do as well against the Joe Bidens as they might have in another period in the Democratic politics. So I think you've got the proper view on that, recognizing that Kathy Hochul, her approval rating in some of the recent polls has her in the low 40s. Democrats do, positive towards her, and that should be more, all things being equal, enough for November because of the huge Democratic advantages.
I just wanted to take everyone through the numbers. According to our friends over at Siena, among registered voters, Kathy Hochul's job approval rating is 41%. In a poll conducted prior to her primary win, 70% of Democrats said they're prepared to elect her to a full term in November if she is and now is the Democratic nominee. Republicans, though, give her an 81% negative job rating. Among independents, 64% gave her a negative job approval score. 59% want someone else to vote for in November. So, Lee, as you and Jay have been talking about, New York is very much a Democratic state. If it were not a Democratic state, what would these numbers mean for Kathy Hochul?
They're not pretty. They're not good numbers. I mean, New York is one of the bluest of the blue states, so much, in fact, that if it's a Republican year nationwide, which I'm not sure will be as much as some are saying, but if it were, you can still be immune from that in New York. Andrew Cuomo was elected during the famous Tea Party uprising of 2010. That was the first time he was elected governor. So he was able to, go against the currents of that national election. And that's what New York can provide, regardless of who the candidates are and the issues and all that kind of things.
So Lee, Hochul's job approval isn't great, but it's a Democratic state. People aren't necessarily enthused. Democrats may not be enthused because they may assume that she's going to do well. There are a lot of other races in New York besides the governor's race that are important to national Democrats. There are a bunch of House seats. We've had a redistricting mess, which could be an entire other show about the redistricting here. But the end of the day, we have a bunch of seats that are much more competitive that Republicans hold and Democrats hold, and who knows which way they all flip. If it's a wave, it could be really rough news for Democrats. Does Kathy Hochul have any coattails?
Probably, it'd be interesting to watch. She's from upstate New York, which is also unusual for a Democratic candidate, governor,
but which is also where most of the at-risk seats are not at risk. They're at risk for Democrats to lose, but the most competitive seats are upstate. Yeah,
so that'll be interesting to see whether there are any coattails. I mean, coattails sort of are no longer in fashion anyway. I think it has more to do with turnout. And if Democrats feel, as they are in some of the things that we've talked about earlier in the program on women's rights and other things, and that they decide to, demonstrate that rage and anger that they're feeling to that and to gun issues and the like, and decide that they really need to have a big turnout this time, that may throw a monkey wrench into the expectations that this should be, all things being equal, a typical huge win for the party out of power in the White House. That would be the Republicans. Now, there could be some reverse coattails, oddly
I was going to ask that. Yeah, right.
Because of that. I'm not a fashion major, so I'm not sure how to even draw the analogy to a reverse coattail. But in any case, the
vest.
The vest, there you go. So Democrats may be showing, well, they are right now, higher motivation than they had been. And while they're there, they could be conceivably voting for the Democrat candidate for governor. It's interesting to watch just from a historical perspective. If you have an upstate Democrat as a gubernatorial candidate, what does that do for the upstate vote? But what does it also do for the downstate vote? And the Republican opponent, Lee Zeldin, is from Long Island. And, New York metropolitan area, is usually where the lion's share of the votes come from. And so we'll have to see. I mean, there's so much in politics right now going on. This is just another of the things that we're going to have to learn about this November.
Well, it certainly gives us something to chew on. And Lee, I think that's
That's a good segue. Mary can do all the segues from here on out. That was
boy, I tell you, I try to pride myself in segues, and I had nothing. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Taking the wrapper off of that one to talk about our current fun fact, which is a 1954 survey done by Gallup.
Did you see the field date, the day it concluded? It's today.
July 7th.
Today.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that crazy?
My goodness. So this is the anniversary of the, I'm trying to figure out how many years, 69, 70, I can't quite subtract that quickly.
2022, 1954.
Yeah, 68 years.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
68 years ago, they came out of the field with this question. Go for it.
Do you think it's all right for children to chew bubblegum or not? That's what all this wrapper and chewing stuff was about.
And what were the results?
Funny you should ask, Jay. 50% said yes in a national poll, 44% said no, and 6% had no opinion, which I find, how can you not have an opinion? I myself was, during this period, a little bit more, a couple years later, or since then, I, was a major baseball card collector, which you bought, not for the baseball cards, but for the bubble gum. So I just want to point that out. I should probably, in the jargon of the day, recuse myself on this question.
But I don't get the split. I mean, I guess why? Why would people not, was it cavities? Was it getting stuck on your shoe? I don't get it.
No, I think it's the cavity thing, I think, at the time.
They didn't have Trident. Oh, it's a brand drop, sorry. They didn't have sugarless gum then?
I don't know. Mary, you've got young
You let your kids, you let them chew gum?
I can't deprive them of a rite of childhood passage. There's no way. I mean, I was a huge bubblegum chewer. I mean, to the point where the bubblegum, the really heavy bubblegum, to see how many pieces of gum you could chew to get the biggest possible bubble. There's no way that I'm depriving my kids of chewing gum.
Yeah,
is there still a split, like among the moms and dads that is anybody ever bring up gum?
It has not been a huge topic of conversation. COVID has sort of dominated the past couple of years.
Well, probably rightfully so. I know.
Yeah. Well, more important than chewing gum.
Yeah, when I played Little League Baseball, I thought the wad that you could put in your cheek, the larger, was simulated the chewing tobacco, which thankfully people don't use now.
I will say that my boys do love that bubblegum chew, whatever it is called. It's still around, Lee, and the boys do enjoy that immensely.
Yeah. So it kind of looks like you're being doing the real thing. Well, anyway, that is probably more than we want to know on this topic, but an interesting walk back in time for our little fun fact.
That'll do it for this edition of Poll Hub.
Poll Hub is a production of the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer.
Casey Schaff is our production supervisor.
If you enjoy Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review. Positive reviews help other listeners like you find us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal.
If you have questions for us, tweet them directly to @MaristPoll.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub, and with any luck, it will cooperate.
Finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button.
Click it, and the latest episode will be ready for you in your podcasting app as soon as we release it.
We'll see you next time.